Today we're going to make a switched light. More precisely, we're going to be learning the basics of Source Engine's input-output system that allows entities to talk, output, and listen through input to other entities or actions throughout the game. So we're going to introduce this by creating a switched light. So the first thing I need you to do is on your map, pick a light, and it should be a light in a room where you've got a light switch. So I have a light switch on the wall over here. I'm going to make this light switch control this light that's in the center of this room. Now I don't have a source on this light yet, but I'll add one eventually. So step number one is we're going to take the light and we want to give that light a name. Okay, so where it says name, I just double clicked on the light. It says name, and I'm going to go ahead and name it. Now, when you name stuff, it's good to come up with what we call a naming convention. So you want to name things using like a system throughout your map, so that when you're looking for objects, you don't have to try to remember some weird name. You know, did you call that light Bob or something? Like I've seen students name entities in their games like really bizarre things like Steve and Joe, and then when we're trying to do the input output and they don't remember what light is Joe. And so I recommend coming up with a naming convention. And so what we mean by that is a system where all of your lights have a similar naming pattern. So for example, in this one I named my light underscore and then where it's at. So now all the other lights in my game I will name like that. I will say light underscore bedroom or light underscore front porch. So that way I know if I'm looking for a light, when I'm looking through my entities, it's going to alphabetize them and they're all going to start with the word light. So I'll be able to find all the lights in my map. And I'm sure one of you is going to go ahead and name your light something like Peter or something like that, and later on you're going to struggle with it because it happens every single year. But nonetheless, my advice and the professional industry advice is to come up with a naming convention so that somebody who's not you could look at this and say, okay, this is light and it's in the living room, and then the next one would be light bedroom, and I would understand that that's what the naming system is. All right, so enough about naming conventions. So name, I picked a name for it. Remember, no spaces and no special characters. So you'll notice I used an underscore, a couple capital letters, but I don't have any spaces in the name. I don't have any exclamation points or anything like that. So no spaces, no special characters, just like our map names. And I've had several students contact me because they can't open their map because they put spaces in it. So I can't emphasize enough, no spaces when you name things. I'm going to click apply. The name's going to go black here, so I know this is good. That's all we have to do. Well, actually, let's turn the light off. So we're going to go to flags and go ahead and check this box that says initially dark. I've already done this, so that's why mine was already checked. But go ahead and check that box that says initially dark. Okay. So we've got this light, I named it, I clicked apply, I went to flags, and I checked the box that says initially dark. Apply, close it. Alright, now we're going to go to where the switch is at. So for this I'm going to take my block tool. Okay, so here's my block tool. And I've got my light switch, it's right here. I kind of centered all my views on it. And I am going to take and draw a little block. And it's going to be a very small block. Okay? Because this is the light switch. So I don't want to make a massive, giant block. I pretty much want to make a block that covers the light switch. And it doesn't have to be exact, but you know, close. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it just needs to be about the size of the light switch. Okay, so something like that. I'm going to press enter to create the box. And then I want to cover it with a texture called no draw, and we've used it before when we did glass. So I've got this box here that I just created. I'm going to go to my texture tool. I'm going to click browse. In the filter, you're going to go ahead and type no draw, and you should see this one here that says no draw, and it makes the box invisible. I don't want this entity to show. It's an invisible entity that acts as a switch. So we've got the switch underneath it, which is just a visual representation of the switch, the decal. This little box we're making is actually like a volume, like a trigger volume almost. So when the player interacts with this volume, this is actually going to be the programming switch. But visually, we've got another thing to provide the visual clue that it's a switch. And you'll see that this is really common the more stuff we make through games. There's a lot of invisible entities within these games. So we're going to use no draw, double click. I'm going to click apply. And so what you're going to end up with is a box. I'm going to take it off the wall here. So you're going to end up with a box that looks like this. It's covered with no draw on all sides. Okay, all sides. And I'm going to place it right in front of the light switch decal. So I'm going to put it right here. So it's covering the light switch decal. Now since it's no draw, it's going to be invisible in the game, which is great. But we're going to put it right over the top of that light switch. We don't want it to stick out really far because we don't want the player to run into it. Now, take your selection tool, click on the box if you haven't already done so. Okay, there's the box. In my two-dimensional view, these three windows here are my two-dimensional views. I'm going to right-click on this box. So I can't do it here. Okay, so see, I'm right-clicking, nothing's happening. Okay, I'm going to go to one of these two-dimensional views. I'm going to right-click on the box. I'll go ahead and pull it out from the wall so you can see it. This is the box right here. I'm going to right-click on it, tie to entity. Okay, so make sure you have this box selected. So I take my selection tool. This is that box that I just made. See, this is that box. I'm going to come into my two-dimensional view, and I'm going to right-click on that box. Right, and I'm going to go to tie to entity. That's going to bring up this box. For the class, where it says func detail, we're going to drop that, and we're going to change it to func button. Okay, so func button, and this is going to change it into a function of a button. So remember before we did a func breakable and we made glass, so we had a function breakable. So this is function button. So we're telling this brush that it's a button. So I'm going to go to class, type in func underscore button, click apply, and you should have this right here. Object properties, func button. All the weird pink stuff should go away here. Where it says name, we're going to name it. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come up with a naming convention. So since this is a switch, I'm going to start with the word switch underscore living room light. All right, click apply. And again, I created a naming convention so that if anyone else were to look at this game, they would understand that this is a switch and this is what it goes to. So rather than name the switch Steve and the light Bill, and then later on I have to try to figure out who's Bill and Steve, this tells me exactly what it is I'm dealing with. Alright, lots of settings in here. We're not going to really mess with anything down in here for now. We are going to go to the flags, And we're going to check this box here that says don't move. The reason for that is by default, all the buttons in Half-Life 2, when you push them, they move in or out. And they move pretty far. And so we don't want our light switch moving outside the house when we press it. So almost every single button I ever make in Half-Life, I'm going to check don't move. We're also going to check toggle. And toggle means when you flip a switch, it goes to its opposite position. So think of a light switch in your house. When you flip it, it goes on. You flip it again, it goes off, right? So it's off, on, off, on. That's toggling the light off and on. So for this particular switch, we just want to be able to walk up to it, press it, it goes on. If we walk up to it again later and it's on and we press it, it goes off. So toggle, we just want it to go to the opposite of whatever it's currently on. So we can walk up and it will just, doesn't matter what the light is doing, when we press the button, it's going to toggle to the opposite position, so off or on. All right, so don't move, check. Toggle, check. Use activates, check. So use activates means that in the game, when the player is touching this and they press the E button or whatever your use button is, its default is E, that's use. So use is going to activate this button. So when you walk up to it, you press E, it's going to toggle the button and make it do whatever we want it to do. Don't check anything else for now. We're going to click apply. Now we're going to go to our output tab, this tab right here. So this is how Source Engine does its game logic. Instead of using a blueprint or programming in C++ or something, it uses what they call an input-output system. So entities output, and other entities will take that output as input, and they talk to each other. And it's how all the game logic is done. So we're going to start, you'll notice this is blank, we're going to click add. And then it opens up all of these menus for us. So the menus understand what this object is. It knows that it's a button. So all of these menus are now tailored to the outputs that a button can do. So for my output named, drop this down, and you're going to see these are all the different things that a button can do. Damaged, in, out, press, if you try to use it, locked, and then these are custom settings we can put up. So this would be like if you shot this button. This would be if the button, if you push it in. This would be if you push it and the button comes out. This would be just if you press the button. This would be if you try to use the button and it's locked. Like, maybe you try to push a button and it's got an alarm on it if it's not unlocked, that kind of stuff. So for us, we're just going to do on pressed. So, and that just means, there's a button when the player tries to use it. It doesn't matter anything. It's just if you press this button, something's going to happen. So this first one here, my output named, on pressed. So when we press it, target entities named. So this is like, who are we going to talk to when I press this? Is there another entity in the world that we would like to speak to? So I'm going to hit this drop down, and you're going to see it's populated this menu with the entities or the named entities that we have in our map. So if you've gone through and named a bunch of your lights or something like that, you're going to see all of them listed because it's all named entities within the game we can output to, we can talk to them. And this is when the naming convention is useful, because now I can look at this and I can say, all right, this is the switch, here's the light for the living room. So I'm going to select my light, and then via this input, so this is saying like, okay, so what do you want to do to this other object from here? What do you want to happen? We're going to click the drop down, and these are going to be all of the different options that this target entity can do. And the neat thing about this system is that once we pick an entity, this via this input drop down will now be things that this object can do. So the game knows that, okay, so you selected a light, so here's what I can do with a light. And so I would like to toggle the light, okay? Not turn off or turn on, but toggle. So remember, toggle just means switch to whatever the other setting is. So if the light's on, it's going to go off. If the light's off, it's going to go on. So that's what toggle's going to do. All right? I'm going to click apply. And that is an output. So we just programmed this button, output named, on pressed. When we press it, it's going to talk to the living room light. And what's it going to do to the living room light? It's going to toggle it. Okay, so let's go ahead and close that. And now let's go back to the light. Now if you look at the light under input, you'll see that there's now an input on this light. So this light knows that that switch is talking to it. So now they're linked together through an input and an output. So you'll notice the light bulb has no output, but it does have an input from the switch. Okay? All right, good. So now I'm going to go ahead and put this where it's supposed to be, right in front of the light switch there. And I will go ahead and run my map. There it is. Let's bring this over for you guys to see it. All right, so here's my map. Let's go inside. All right, so there's my living room light is off. I come over here and I press E, lights on. Okay, so every time I press E, it's toggling my light. If I press E again, light goes away. If I step away, the switch doesn't work. If I come over close to it and point in its general direction. Now the accuracy of the use feature is, you know, if your player hull is touching or close to it, it's going to let you use it. So you might be able to, you know, mess with the lights from a little bit further away than you think you should be able to. See, I can click it from like right here, even though I know that it's just right there. It's just the way the player hull interacts with the whole thing, so it's not a problem. You could shrink it down a little bit if you think it's a problem, but I don't think it's really that big of a deal. All right, so that is your switched light, your basic input-output system. I would like to see one light, and for your screenshot today, give me a screenshot showing the output of the light switch. So that's what I would like on your screenshot today. Show me the output screen of the light switch. So I would want to see this right here. So if we double click this guy, I would like to see this right here. The output, that's what I want to see on your screenshot for today. All right, and then once you figure that out, you can put as many as you want. Don't go crazy with it because you can create too many lights on a surface, which causes problems. But that's it for today. Input, output, make me a switched light.